Observability strategies with EKS. We're going to start in a little more broad with a bit of basic foundational information on observability as a whole, and then we'll focus in on some of the things you can do and approaches for getting insights into EKS and understanding your clusters. Really basic level set. Why are we doing observability? What's the point here? We're trying to detect, investigate things. We're trying to make sure that we can figure out how to remediate our clusters or anything that's happening there. We're also really trying to get deeper insights into the clusters and understand, okay, how can I improve the performance? How can I make this something where I'm really having a better solution over time, or I'm fixing something that is occurring in the moment, right? And the way that we get at that is we have kind of these three pillars that are pretty strong that you'll need to have. You need to have your logs, you need to have your metrics, you need to have your traces. Each of these are kind of foundational things for you to get at that information. So then it becomes, how do I get this information? What am I using it for? And what is my main way of getting at it in a way that is truly accessible for my team or for the people that are working on these clusters, right? So we get in there, we want to collect that information, we want to know what we're doing with it, but there's some barriers to making this happen, right? So onboarding can be a barrier. Right off, I'm saying, hey, I want to gather this information, but what way do I gather it? Is it an OTIL approach to doing these things? Is it something that's maybe cloud specific to the vendor that I'm using? What do I do to gather this information, and how do I get it into my solutions? Like, how can I make that simpler? Because there are multiple approaches for doing this. Which one's the right approach for me and my people? What metrics to collect? I can collect everything. Do I need everything? Probably not. You probably don't need everything. Let's look at your clusters, see what it's doing, and pick and choose which metrics are of the most value to you, or follow an opinionated approach that gives you some guidance on, as an industry, we've said this is the best way to collect some of these metrics, right? And then analyze that impact, right? Understand, like, okay, I've got the metrics, I've got the logs, the traces are telling me some information, kind of so what? What do they mean? What does connecting them actually, get, how do I take that data and turn it into information? How do I make it something where I can look at it and say, okay, this is value that I'm getting out of this, not just, okay, there's an error here. Like, is it an important error? Is it actually causing problems? Is it more like something's going wrong, but I'm recovering nicely from it? Understand these things. And then, what is the right opinionated approach to make this occur? Can I just take somebody else's perspective, or does my company need to have its own approach to do this? It tends to take some thought, and some effort to go after it. And if I have a decision, can I change it over time? Is this something where I can evaluate this and move it along? With a lot of our solutions, you can do that. In fact, that's one of the things that's nice there is I can choose to start with one solution, and then go over and say, you know what, I really need to move over to this other approach to doing it. And then finally, cost. Observability is great, but it can't cost more than your application, right? Like, we've got to have a balance there on how much we're paying to get that insight and understand what we're getting. So in AWS, we like to give you options, right? So there's several ways you can kind of approach this. This is kind of an overview of our tool set that's there. I want to point out kind of three overall approaches that we have to do it. One, you can go with like a managed open source approach. This is going to be more like your Prometheus Grafana type services, things like that, where you're saying, look, these are open source solutions, they're available to us, they're things that we can leverage, and we know we can use that in multiple locations. Sometimes that's the right approach for you to make that happen. It's really have a strong tool set in that space. Another type option might be down there where you see our Amazon OpenSearch service. And that's another place where I can pump all my logs, I can pump my metrics, I can pump my traces, and I can get insights from that service. And that could be a strong approach for doing your observability, actually getting those insights into one window where I can go ahead and check it out and make sure that I understand this is how my teams are going to solve this. And then the last approach is our cloud native services, which is a number of the ones up there, but they focus around CloudWatch and the tools that we've built into that. That's going to be things like our container insights, our logs, all these things. I'm going to focus on that last one because it's a 15-minute talk. I can't deep dive on each of them. But there's good use cases for all of those approaches and those solutions. If you want to talk more about that, just catch me after. We can dive into that. All right. So one of the first problems I brought up was, okay, how do I collect the metrics, right? Do I use ADOT? Do I go ahead and say, I'm going to do these various open telemetry approaches to gather my metrics? One of the things we've done is we've done a big improvement with the CloudWatch agent, in the CloudWatch agent, essentially now you can use that and you will have fewer things that you need to get deployed. Instead of have to have your X-ray daemon, your OTel collector, or some kind of tracing daemon in your OTel collector, you can just do it all with the CloudWatch agent. You can deploy that, you just have that one sidecar running, and that's going to be able to take care of all that for your logs, your metrics, and your traces. It kind of enables all of that now. So that's been a big improvement. It is backwards compatible, and it does work with OpenTelemetry, right? Which is a big deal. You can then take it, your code is pushing out OpenTelemetry metrics. That is able to be gathered by your CloudWatch agent. If you change your mind, you want to do something that's more open source, you can still do that, right? So it's not locking you into it, but it is pretty powerful for making it so that you can rapidly at least gather the metrics and gather the traces and stuff, things of that, and your logs, basically all of them. So let's look at these a little bit. So CloudWatch Logs has a number of tools. We have like anomalies, we have a lot of ways to get at the information. Today I just want to highlight insights. It's a great way for you to basically be able to say, you know what, I've got my logs, and I'll do a demo in a little bit. I've got my logs, and I want to understand what's the pattern with these logs? What's going on with them? Can I filter them, search them? Can I do basically deep analysis and understand, is there a repeating pattern over time with my system so I can actually get to the root of things? And CloudWatch Insights really kind of highlights that space. And it integrates deeply with several of our services. I think the main thing that I find really powerful about it is there's not just the logs here, but when I show the demo, it also shows when the logs are happening. As you can see visually, like a set of spikes and dips, and then you can also just dig into the actual content that's coming out of those logs, which can be really powerful. Like, hey, everything looked like it was fine, we published something new, and now I've got a whole bunch of logs coming out. I'm like, okay, that's not normal. Let's go look at that spiked area, and I'll show that in a little bit. The next service I want to highlight a little bit of is our Container Insights. I know we're focused on EKS here, but we have Enhanced Container Insights. That's been a big deal for EKS for a little while. We now offer it in ECS. That's a newer release for that. But what's really interesting here that I want to make sure you all get a good sense of is you can kind of slice and dice it. You start off looking at the whole cluster, great. You can use that to dig down and say, hey, the problem tends to be the service. I've got this service, and it's what's causing the most issues, right? And then from there, maybe I look down and see which pod that's associated with that service is the one that's I need to dig into, and do I have any alarms or any messaging around that to make it more obvious to me how I get at it. This tool, which we'll show a little bit, is a key part of figuring that out. And at a different kind of level, whereas I like Container Insights, it does a good job of giving you a sense of the components. Hey, these are my pods that are having issues. These are my specific nodes that are having an issue. And I can look at that level. With application signals, I'm looking at it from a kind of a pivoted view. It's more like, what part of my application, so this APM manager, what part of my application is having a problem? And then I can trace that down, even down to, it's my pet service. I have a pet website. It's my pet service, but not just all of the pet service, it's the Git calls on the pet service. Like my Git list pets. That's the one thing that's having the issue. That's more application oriented, but it connects the dots on that and has an opinionated approach to some of the metrics you do there. We'll talk about that more basically now. So I wanted to do a brief demo for you guys. So I come in here, and let me get that. It should start playing. Okay, there you go. Okay, so we go straight into Container Insights. I'm getting a sense of what's going on with my application. I want to pause that real quick. Right away, I've got multiple clusters that are showing up here, right? So I've got this nice honeycomb looking thing here. My red cluster is the one I'm probably going to pay the most attention to. That means I've got some alerts, I've got some alarms that are going on. My green clusters here are pretty healthy, and I can highlight over them to kind of get a sense of what's going on, right? I can see, right now I'm just showing you the alarms, low utilization, my low blue ones aren't being used very much. I can click on that cluster, and it gives me some general information. I can see where the cluster alarms are coming off. Are they happening in my cluster? Are they happening in my nodes? Where am I getting the alarm from, right? I can get a sense of that. My green one I can see is doing just fine. These blue, I'll pause there for a second. It's not that something's wrong with the dark blue ones, it's that they're using a lot of memory, and I want to be aware of that because I might be under allocating the amount of memory that's going on in there. So it gives me a nice visual cue. There's something there that I might need to be paying attention to. It might be on its way to being something that we really need to focus in on. So great, I get that, I understand the memory that's going on there. Gives me this high level information. These are basically underutilized clusters. I might want to look at those just from an efficiency and a cost perspective, to see what's going on. I get some performance metrics up in the top left, and some cluster control plane metrics. And this is kind of interesting, so you can see what's happening with your control plane, and you kind of get a summary view of it there. As I scroll down, I end up, if my cluster here just has CPU, but if I have GPU, I can also pivot through GPU and GPU memory as well. I can gather that information here and get a good sense of what services and what machines are using the most amount of power. And at this level, I'm looking at it at the cluster level, so it's more focused on the actual machines. Those are the machines associated with my compute, right? Once I have that, I'm getting this nice high level here, but I might want to dig into something, right? I might want to go in and say, okay, now I know what's happening in this space with my cluster. If I want to go into the next level, I can dive in a little bit more. And here I'm just looking to see which ones are performant. I got one more overview page here at the bottom, which I like, and it shows me kind of a snapshot of individual clusters and what their kind of profile looks like from a memory and CPU perspective. Let's go look at the one that has the error. So with the error one, I loaded up, the data loads on me, and I can go ahead and see at a cluster level, it'll come in where I basically have this, hold on, it shouldn't be taking that long to load. There it goes, okay. So I can go ahead and see right at the top at my cluster, it's showing me which alarms I actually triggered, right? So it's providing that kind of deeper insight for me, right? It's not, I knew I had alarms, now it's like, okay, specifically which alarms got triggered. And then I have a bunch of other metrics that are coming here, all the way down to kind of a deeper set of metrics on like your network traffic, what's going on with the bytes received for the different pods, your node performance. There's quite a bit of information that's there. And again, I can slice and dice it. Right now I'm at the cluster level, but as we go in, I'll be able to slice it down to be more specific and dig into those components that I want to get to, right? So here you go, I clicked on my alarm, and it basically took me down and said, okay, let's go look at the containers that are having this potential issue. And I can see my containers are pretty spiky, right? I get some insight from that. I potentially investigate that to see where do I want to go discover what issues are occurring, what's happening in this space. Frankly, with most of this, it looks like, okay, it's probably not too bad. Maybe I'll look at it at a workload level to see if at that level, if I have more insights to be gained from this system. And I like that you can get the same kind of metrics at each of these levels. You can get some consistency across your system. And that's something we've done in this, we've made an opinionated drive towards having some level set metrics that you'll go after. So okay, great, I've looked at the workloads, I go in here. Maybe I need to look at this from a little bit different perspective. Let me go look at my application signals and see, rather than looking at the individual components, let's look from the application how it's working. And I can see here now I've got another clue that I've got some stuff that's unhealthy with this vet service that I'm looking at. And I'll take just a second here. The vet service, right now, all the metrics that you're seeing across the top, these metrics are associated with that get vets. It's just that one method. If I want to see what's happening with get accrual information, or there's several other ones that are down there, I can get the same kind of golden metrics we have here, which are our volume and availability, our latency, and our error rates. And that gives me a chance to have the same kind of data across each of my services. I can look in here, I can see what the availability, notice my availability is 100, I can see my volumes kind of going up and down, that's that orange line, that's the amount of people that are using my service. Okay, not a big deal. My latency is kind of spiking on some of these things, and all those data points, if I want to, I can click on them and see what correlated information I have with that service, right? So if I end up clicking on one of those, I end up loading up a new window that will go ahead and show me additional information I have, including the correlated traces. So now I went from seeing a high level of the metrics and a little bit of which particular method is getting called to I have the traces. I click one of the traces, I can come in and see my service. It tells me, my map tells me a little bit of information on where I might be having the issues. You can kind of dig in from that perspective. And I can see, okay, is any of this look like, it might be, part of the issue that's going on. I'll scroll down here in a second. And when I do that, then you can go ahead and see the paths and what's going on with the paths. So obviously there's a fault going, there's a couple of faults that are happening, and those would be ones to investigate pretty quickly to see, okay, this is probably where I'm having the issue. I can track that down and say, here's the faults, here's what's going on in that space. Maybe I'm also curious, what are the logs that I've been having with this service? So I'm not going to click on the faults. We figured out, likely it's going to be that 500 error. I need to do something about that, right? And I've been able to make that connection. But let's go just look at the logs. We'll look at the logs for the vet service quickly, just so we get a chance to see what's happening there. Oh, hold on first. I'm coming into the vet service for this. Let me see if I can slip that forward. I got to let it run. So here, I'm doing one more last look at the pod level to understand, if I see what's happening there. And I can definitely see the one I just passed up. I'm capping out on utilization in the pod. And that's probably what's causing the issue. Basically, I'm hitting a peak on the amount of memory that I'm getting. Now I'm going to deep dive into the logs. So that's, I'm able to see a little more about that error if I wanted to dig in. And I just wanted to show in Log Insights how I can kind of trim and see the information a little differently. So first I do a query. I've got a filter here where I'm just filtering it by the logs that I care about. So I'm doing that at a specific service. And the real thing I want to point out here is, yes, I can go open each of these logs. I can dig in and do that. But that little visual chart across the top, I found to be very powerful. Like, if it's normally this near zero, really small, and then 400, those logs are probably pretty interesting to go look at, right? You do that, you can get at that information from that direction as well. And that's the last thing I wanted to highlight in the demo. Really what we're able to do is we're able to take it where you can, with using these services in connection, you take those metrics, you take the logs, you take the traces, and you're interacting with each of them in a very seamless way, right? You're kind of going back and forth. You don't have to say, oh, I was looking at this metric, now let me open up this other window and go look at these logs. I was looking at these logs, let me open up this other window, go look at these traces. I can kind of navigate back and forth between all of them as I'm doing my investigation. I think that's really natural and a good way for you to get strategic insights in there. So quickly, I think with CloudWatch Agent, we're able to onboard a lot faster. It's a lot easier to get past that initial hurdle of how do we take it and say, we just want to get there. We want to get into the system and make it happen. You get an opinion view, you get basically a set of all the metrics you might need from these dashboards and what's going in there. If you want to change them, you want to add to them and modify, you can do some of the things. You can make some of your own dashboards and your own approaches to doing it, but you don't have to start from zero. You've got experts that have been feeding us what you think is the best approach, right? Like we're telling you, a lot of our customers are saying this is a good way to get at solving problems. You have application signals, does a great job of like end-to-end integration of those metrics, logs, and traces so that you can really dig into that solution. We are opinionated, we are giving you a perspective on this. We're not expecting you to know everything coming in. You come in, you can get a direct start going in that. Cost and pricing, I didn't highlight in here, but we have something called split data costs, which is is a newer feature we released over the last year or so. And it allows you to gather your metrics from EKS and from ECS and then split them so you can see by task or by service, by pod, by node, where you're spending the money. And that's also a really interesting kind of approach to making that happen. And that's it. Thank you all very much. Please fill out the survey.